Alright, hello. Pop. Hello everyone. I was working at Gothenburg Film Festival the other week, and I met a salesperson from Scandinavian Photo there. They had a small booth where they were showing the Ursa 12K Cine and the Burano. So I went there during the break, and he asked me if I wanted to borrow it, and hells yeah, I want to borrow it. It was a good time to borrow it because I was like fully booked with both like client work and one scene for the feature film me and my father are making. My main camera is an FX9, and the FX9 is a very good camera in a lot of ways. It's like everything you need, especially for doing like client work, shooting interviews and, you know, making content. But I do use it as my main camera for the feature film, and I've also shot a couple of films on it. One feature and shot 2 short films, and now we're making a second feature film where this camera is right now the main camera. Actually, it's quite funny because I've used a lot of cameras because we've been making this film for many years. So the first scenes we shot on the F3. And then I got an F7 and shot a part of it with that, and now I'm mainly using the FX9, but now also I've shot one scene with the Burano with it, so soon I've shot like with a whole decade of Sony cameras. Sometimes when I shoot with the FX9 I feel like it's a bit uninspiring. And I'm not really sure if it's just the lenses I'm using, how we light it. I use a lot of autofocus lenses. Perhaps that's why I sometimes feel like I want more, so it doesn't necessarily have to do with the camera, but there are still some quirks with the FX9. Like I feel like there's a lot of reds in the face that I always, when I grade, I try to take it out, and also the compression is kind of high. Sony has multiple different Xavc for their more serious cameras like the Venice and the F55. They have class 300 and they have class 200, and class 200 is the least compressed codec you can get in the FX9, and Xavc 200 is like the most compressed but without too much image quality loss. It's like in the sweet spot, but if you really push the camera when you grade it, and you have a lot of contrast in the scene, like if you have very, very deep shadows, there is a lot of compression in the shadows, and the more I work with the camera, I start to see all these little limitations that the FX9 has. I had a red to shoot the latest feature film that is already finished, and I started to shoot with the red, and I do like the image quality better. It was a Dragon. You can make the FX9 look like the red almost, but overall I prefer the Dragon way more, the image. However, as the shoot went on, I started to more and more shoot with the FX9 just because it was so much easier for me to do so. I sometimes feel like maybe I should keep the FX9 and use the FX9 probably most of the time, but then have another camera to do more of the high-end stuff. I've looked both at Red Dragons and of course the Burano or the Venice. Jag försöker spela in. Kan du komma och säga hej? This is my new cat. Hello! Kan du vara med på film? Har du sett? I call him the little guy, but he's not that little. He's kind of big. I've been looking at cameras that is more designed for making films. And the Venice, the first one, the 6K, is starting to drop in price. I think that could be a good thing. But then there's the Burano, who has autofocus, so I can use it the same way that I use the FX9, but still have that image quality, that Venice-like image quality. So I was very intrigued when he offered to hand it out to me. I took it both on some gigs, just shooting PowerPoint presentations, and also on the feature. In the middle of all of this, I watched The Crown on Netflix, which, by the way, was an amazing show. The first seasons was shot on the F55. And it's because of the 4K mandate. There weren't that many cameras except for Red that shot 4K. I thought that show looked amazing. It has a very conservative look, which fits. I think it's really cool. They light it with a lot of practicals, and then they light it mostly from the windows. So you have daylight coming in and then practicals. And I think that's a nice way to shoot, to have space where actors can move around, you can be more free with the camera. So I thought the whole thing was very, very cool, and I think it looked very good. The F55 started to intrigue me a little bit, and they are super cheap, or well, not super cheap, but you can get the camera body for like 2,000 euros. So I went down to my rental place Storyline and asked them if they had an F55, and they hadn't been renting them out for over 2 years, and they had to go get it from a warehouse, but I rented it. At the same time, I had the Burano, so I had a chance to try both the newest stuff and the oldest stuff. Unfortunately, I had so much to do, so I never really had the time to test them. I still want to share the little test I did. The Burano is a really cool camera. I mean, it's like they put a cinema sensor in like an FX9 body that has IBIS and variable ND filters and all of that good stuff. It does have some quirks. It has like the rolling shutter is really bad. I think it's like 18 milliseconds, and I think the FX9 is a little bit worse. Actually, I think it's 22 or something, but it was really noticeable. But I never really think about it with the FX9, so I don't think it would have bothered me that much with the Burano. However, I think it's a really expensive camera, and if you're in America, maybe you think it's expensive, but it costs almost twice as much in Sweden because of currency conversion and taxes and all of that stuff. I don't think they've sold many Buranos here in Scandinavia because we have no market for it. And a lot of my friends in the industry, they don't even know that camera exists. So, but anyway, I tested it, and it has a better picture, for sure. It has a lot more detail, and the colors are more accurate. Skin looks nice immediately. You don't have to go in and fix like you have to. Like I believe that you have to do a little bit with the FX9, and that's nice. I shot them. I tested it. I shot it in a bunch of different codecs, and I mean, it looks nice in all codecs. I could probably see myself shoot a lot of Xavc with it. But for the feature shoot, I shoot it in 8K with XOCN and all of this stuff. And files are, of course, heavier. And unfortunately, I cannot get full speed playback on my computer. I'm not really sure why, if it's that like my computer is not powerful enough, or if it's a compatibility problem. I have a Ryzen 9 12-core processor. I have a 3080 graphics card. I have 96 gigabytes of RAM, almost 400 megabytes per second from my NAS to my computer. So the encoding or decoding of the XOCN is where it falters. So that was a little bit that was not so fun. I hoped I could be able to play it back, but you can make proxies and so on, but I don't want to make proxies for all the like I shoot a lot, and if I have to do proxies for all the projects, I'm just gonna drown in hard drives. Well, I like the Burano, but when you don't have anything to compare to, I kind of felt like, ooh, I don't know if it has any meaningful difference from if I have just shot the scene with the FX9. So even though I tested the camera, I haven't been any smarter. It's just such a big investment, and nobody is asking for that camera here. Even though it costs I mean, I could get an Alexa Mini for about the same price, but and it's like an older camera. It's only HD. It draws more power. It's just more problems, I think, and my E-mount lenses doesn't fit on it and so on. But I think I still have made that money back after a while, because I know that people were gonna rent it from me. So it feels like it's just it's a better deal, even though the Burano is way better camera in almost all aspects. However, when I tested the F55, I quickly felt like old stuff. It's a bit chunky, it's a bit slow, and even though you shoot Xavc, you cannot use Sony RAW controls in DaVinci Resolve that you can do with the more modern cameras, and I'm used to that now, so that was kind of a disappointment. You can shoot RAW with the F55 if you have the recorder, but if you have the old recorder, then you shoot Sony RAW, not XOCN, and Sony RAW is like, it's comparable to Red's 3:1, so the files are massive, which is kind of inefficient. It has a global shutter, that's nice, but that also means that the camera has limited dynamic range, and I wasn't super impressed with the low light capabilities of the camera. I feel like I think a Dragon is cleaner, and all the new Sony cameras are of course a lot cleaner, and it saves me a lot of time, especially making narrative films with limited budgets, just to shoot in the second base ISO and then and then make something with the lights. You don't have to like, you don't need big lights, you don't need to you can think differently when you have that second base ISO. So that camera kind of meh. I don't think I'm gonna do that. It's much better to get, I think, the stuff that people really need and want and is better, even though it costs way more. I don't want it to be an expensive paperweight. I would much rather buy a second FX9, because sometimes I feel that I really need to. I have F7, but sometimes it would be nice to have two autofocus cameras, and sometimes it's also nice to have two matching cameras. Like the footage right off the camera is matching. You don't have to spend time in post. Sometimes you can't spend time in post. You have to give it away the way it is. So I think that would be better. But all in all, I think they look pretty much the same if you work with them and if you light for them. Yeah, I think a Sony camera is always a Sony camera. If you want that extra, I think you need to step up to something like the Vericam, Alexa Mini, the Reds. If you want that bump in image quality, I think so. Well, anyway, I wanted to show the test. Yes, that's about it. See you next time.